Kia ora everyone, a very warm welcome to you. Welcome to No Boundaries. I'm sure, like me and all cricket fans out there, you're a little bit tired at the moment of the back end of the Ashes, and I've got some really exciting people to talk cricket with today. I have got the wonderful Mike Hesson, and I've also got Craig Cumming for the first time on No Boundaries. Both of you in Dunedin, surely you could have got together for a cup of coffee for this one, but Craig, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. First time, and I've watched it many times, so a real privilege to be alongside you.
Oh, it's so nice to talk cricket with you again, and I'm sure, gentlemen like me, you're a little bit tired. 5 brilliant Ashes tests, I think we can safely say. England wrapping it up with that win by 49 runs against Australia, although Australia retained the Ashes. They have drawn the series, and I think that was probably a fair result for what was truly a captivating series, Mike Hesson.
Yeah, probably a fair result. I think England will rue the first test. I mean, there'll be a lot of talk about the rain at Old Trafford, but I think that the first test where Australia needed 50 with 2 wickets in hand in a relatively low-scoring affair. I mean, when Craig Cumming, not Craig Cumming, here we go, Pat Cummins and Lyon put on that 50-run partnership in the first test, that was probably the difference. And I think England will look back and rue that in terms of potentially their tactics about not taking the new ball. But, I mean, it was captivating. It was a fantastic series, and it was one that England certainly, I guess, kept the mantra of playing that aggressive style of cricket. And I really would have wanted them to win just because of the way they went about it. Australia sort of played that sort of stoic sort of style. You know, their seam bowlers probably ran out of steam a little bit towards the back end, and they certainly missed Nathan Lyon. But it was an amazing series and one that I certainly thoroughly enjoyed watching.
Craig, you know, it was not short of drama. There was plenty of it, whether it was coming from off the field, ex-players, commentators getting involved. Obviously, the current players, you've got a shock announcement halfway through. Brendon McCullum, coach of that England side, actually said off the back of that final result, hey, how about we just go around again? Let's play another 5. And I could absolutely, as a cricket fan, watch that. It was a really exciting, I think if you're a Test cricket fan, it was just such a exciting test series.
Yeah, it was, and lucky enough, I actually went to day 1, believe it or not, of the Oval Test match, and I've flown home since then, and I watched the last day on my couch, so it just shows how small the world is. But yeah, you're right, and I think England probably rue that they're a little bit slow to get going, and maybe not enough cricket before the first test, especially from a bowling point of view. But, I mean, 2 things happened. One, Nathan Lyon got ruled out, and I still believe he's probably the most important part of the Australian side from all of their players. And then England started to find, I suppose, their mojo. They started to get a little bit more consistent, but also tough. They were 2-0 down and a lot of pressure on them. But like you guys, I just thought it was captivating. I enjoyed watching Test cricket. You're right, the opinions of ex-players, commentators, just about that was probably more the talking point in the first Test. Then the cricket started to take over, and you know, I know Brendon's a big fan of the way they're playing, and he's talking about not resurrecting Test cricket, but making sure it holds its place. And you can't argue with the way that England are playing. I went to the first day; it was nibbling around a wee bit, it was swinging a bit, it was overcast, and they went out and scored it just about 5 runs and over, and they looked like they were doing it with ease. So, you know, from a fan's point of view, I'm like the rest of you. I'd love to see another 5 Test matches because it's just been so compelling.
I'll just need a couple of months just to get a bit of sleep, just to bank it, to get back on that. But for me, watching that series, I felt like England, that whole Johnny Bairstow situation, and look, everyone's got their opinions on it, but it was like it ignited something in that England side particularly. It lit a fire in their bellies perhaps they didn't have in the first test or perhaps the second. I mean, I know they are playing the style they want to play, but it was like they flipped a switch and it was like, right, these next 3 tests, they're ours. And look, quite possibly, had the rain not been a factor, that could have been the case. Was there any other defining moments? We've spoken about Nathan Lyon and his injury being huge for the Aussies, but for you, to your mind, what was a defining moment in that series?
Well, I think post that match, they actually brought in some ammunition in their bowling attack. I mean, their bowling attack completely changed when Woakes and Wood came in. I mean, they were very much a pop gun attack prior to that. And it was, you know, Robinson came in with all of the thought about he's going to be the next Jimmy Anderson and all that sort of thing. He really didn't fire a shot, to be fair. He had a couple of little niggles. But Woakes showed, you know, what a miss he is from an all-round perspective. I mean, he was man of the match in that 3rd Test match. And Wood was outstanding in terms of the pace and the variety that he added to that attack. So all of a sudden, England had an attack where if they got a new batter at the crease, they could actually attack them with pace, or they could attack them with movement rather than just trying to contain with the ball and hoping that Australia would make a mistake. So for me, and that sort of aligned with when Nathan Lyon, missed out as well. You combine those two things, and that was a massive shift in the quality of the two playing 11s. And certainly from that point on, England completely dominated the series. And to be fair, as I said, without rain at Old Trafford, they would have won that. I mean, I know Australia got runs on the fourth evening, but that was basically because England had to bowl spin. If they were able to still continue with attack, with seam bowlers, then Australia wouldn't have even got close. So that, to me, was the defining moment, the change when Woakes and Wood came in.
For you, Craig, what was the big defining moment in the series for you?
Yeah, I'm with Hesson on the introduction of Wood. All of a sudden, they had a guy that could unsettle their top order, and it just meant I think their balance became better. They they brought back a spinner, obviously, who could play an early, but also he batted up the order. But yeah, Wood was the introduction, and all of a sudden, a guy bowling over 150 Ks, it just made the Australian batters uncomfortable. It meant they could target the tail end, and that put them on the front foot. And that meant when they went out to bat, they were on the front foot as well. And then the way Crawley, I suppose, repaid the faith that he's had over the last year and a half, that innings in Manchester was outstanding. They sort of got behind Bairstow after that incident, and then he started to play well. But I think the defining moment, as Hess just mentioned, was Wood. And Wood allowed Woakes to do what he does. So they all of a sudden had variation, and they had some answers for all the conditions they were thrown at. And again, throw that with losing Lyon. I think that was the big swinging moment.
So one of the big moments, and I think it caught me by surprise because everyone was so busy talking about Jimmy Anderson retiring. I did not see on the eve of day 4 Stuart Broad announcing that day 5 on the final test at the Oval would be his last game or last day of cricket. He retires with 604 test wickets after playing 167 tests. In the 5 matches that he played all 5 of this series, 22 wickets, and he bowled 184 overs. He got a 6 on the last ball that he faced when he was batting, and he got a wicket on the last ball that he bowled. When it comes to sport and finishing the way you want, sometimes the script is written for you in a way you couldn't even imagine, and I think we can safely say for Stuart Broad, yes, he deserved a send-off like that. He has been one of the great players in that England Test side.
Yeah, and I had goosebumps myself when he took that last wicket because he deserved it. The amount of years, 16 years on the international circuit, and he is one of the greats. He keeps running in. Jimmy Anderson's the guy who swings it around corners, but Stuart Broad's the guy who attacks from the other end. He finds different ways of getting wickets, whether it be the new ball, the old ball. And with the bat, he's, before he got hit in the nose, he was contributing a heck of a lot with the bat. And he started to get a little bit better under Bazball, where he came out with no fear and just swung from the hip. And we saw a little bit of his quality with the bat towards the back end of his career as well. But he's gone out on top. And, he talked about wanting to go out on top. As you've alluded to, Laura, you can't do much better than that. Winning an Ashes test, hitting a 6 off the last ball, taking a wicket with your last ball, it just doesn't get any better than that. And he thoroughly deserves it, and he'll make that smooth transition straight into the commentary box now, where I think he's pretty much got his next 20 years set up.
Craig, do you reckon after that those last couple of overs he bowled in that final test, he thought, oh, that was pretty good. I've still got it.
Yeah, look, I saw the interview with him and Jimmy Anderson, and he said he ran off straight away and took off his bowling boots, and it felt pretty good. You're never going to replace, I suppose, what you miss about the game, and that's the change room, your friendships. But I suppose there's always a saying, you're better off to go out when everyone still thinks you should be playing than when everyone thinks that you shouldn't be. And he's obviously thought long and hard. I think the thing that stands out with me with Broad, if you go back 2 years ago, this guy, I think he was really struggling. He was bowling about 125 to 27 Ks. He was, just about dead and buried. And then I think the introduction of Brendon, they were trying to rest him and play him 1 every 3 test matches. And under Brendon, I suppose he's got another lease of life. But I look through his career and you watch some of the amazing things that he's been able to do is he's always tried to get better. And even before this series, he talked about developing an outswinger because he wanted to target Labuschagne and Smith's outside edge. And he's always obviously had that drive to keep improving, to keep working hard and never be satisfied. And you look at his numbers and the way he runs in and the size of his frame to have the longevity, the skill and the success he's had. He deserves everything that's gone his way. And I also think in the last year, you've seen more of his character come out on the field. In the Ashes series, he's pumping his arms. Even this last test match, swapping the bales around, having some fun. You've seen a little bit. Yeah, it was brilliant. And I think you're seeing what I like about, I think Brendon's brought out of this English side is their character, the smiles, and also Ben Stokes. They're showing who they are as individuals, and it's so much more fun for us as fans, and I think it's more fun for them as players as well.
Broad is 37 years old. You've got Anderson, who's also 41 years old, and I think Anderson seems pretty grumpy on the field, and that's fine. Maybe that's his personality. But Broad, you're right, Craig. He sort of had a new lease on his cricketing life. Is there something to be said for that? Do we have to get rid of players as quickly as they turn 35? Is there maybe more in the tank because they have a better understanding of themselves as people, themselves as players? Is there something that maybe coaches could take out of this England side and what Baz is trying to do with this team?
I think you identify really quickly who are those players that towards the end of their career are trying to hang on, and who are those, as Craig alluded to, are actually still trying to get better to stay relevant. And you can identify them. They're not all the same. So, some 35-year-olds are ready to retire and should have a year or two ago, and some are just reaching their prime. So, with Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson, they're guys who were given just test match contracts about 4 or 5 years ago. So they haven't played any white ball cricket since then. They've been able to be really consistent in terms of preparing for test match series, playing a lot of first-class cricket, being really specific in terms of the skill set they need. Therefore, those guys can have some longevity in the game and still contribute to that next group coming through. So, those are a special breed and ones you want to hang on to. And just going back to the Brendon side of things, I think a lot of people don't understand, but often coaches are trying to hang on to their job, and often that can create some tension. Guys are actually there in many ways to stay relevant themselves and stay alive and sign a new contract. Whereas Brendon's, it's great. He actually doesn't care. He's there for the team. He's there. And if England cricket don't want him, he'd be quite fine to go and find himself another job, whether it be broadcasting or looking after horses or whatever. He'll be just fine. So that is a great place to be from a coaching point of view, where you're actually just there for the team. And you're not trying to hang on to your job. You're not creating extra pressure in the changing room that some people do. So he will create a light changing room, a fun changing room, a changing room where people want to play for him. And Ben Stokes will be the same. Like he's just there getting stuck in, having fun. And that is a great environment to be a part of. So, yeah, I agree. Certainly many coaches around the world could learn a lesson from that.
Well, we've all spent a lot of time with Brendon McCullum, and I was with him at the New Zealand Golf Open early this year. I said, "You're doing amazing things." He said, "I'm not doing anything." I said, "Oh, OK, well, even you just say that. Could you be more Kiwi and humble?" But he is. But you can tell, you can see in his interviews, the way he's smiling on the balcony, all the things. He is obviously loving being part of that group as well, Craig.
When I turned up on the first day and walked in, and literally I was on the boundary, and 4 metres in front of the boundary was Brendon. So I don't like yelling out or that, but I did squirt some water in his direction and turned around. He came over, literally 3 steps, said, "What are you doing here?" And then, just said, "Things are going well." He said, "Mate, I'm doing nothing." He said, "Look, even in warm-ups, I just stand here." And he said, "I've got my deck chair up there and just watch." So Hess is right. I mean, as coaches, we try and make, our players sort of detach from consequence and go out and play with freedom. But it's not that easy as a coach if you're getting judged on results, where Brendon really... He's having the time of his life. He's been involved in an Ashes series, I heard him say this morning. He never thought he'd do that. He's a Kiwi, and he's absolutely loved it. So that just flows on to the players. If you've got a coach smiling, relaxed, trying to, just enjoy themselves, the players will do that. And, he's the first one to admit he doesn't do a lot. Even at training, he walks around. It's probably a good lesson that he just talks to players. He just tries to make them feel good. He's not doing a lot of throwing. We'd all love to be in that position, and he's got a few more resources than most of us probably have. But it does flow on, and it's a nice template that a lot of us have got to remind ourselves, why we're here and what we're doing, and we all want to get the best out of each other. And that's exactly what Brendon's doing, and he's got the biggest smile on his face. But then he gets to come home and he gets to switch off too, and I think that's really important.
I do remember when he was captain, he was all about remembering why you were there, and it was all about, the game and your love of the game, and you should never lose that. So it's really cool to see a Kiwi over there doing such good things. I'll ask you one more question before we wrap up our chat on the Ashes. Can this England side win in Australia in 2 years' time? Hess?
I think bowling will be their challenge. Keeping the likes of Mark Wood fresh. If they get Jofra Archer back playing red ball, then that makes a massive difference. Whether that will happen, remains to be seen. But Wokes won't be as effective with the Kookaburra. I think we see averages over 50 away from home. So I just see their bowling as the challenge. I think batting-wise, no problems. I think they've got a huge amount of depth in the batting side of things. Someone like Robinson, as I said, needs to step up with the ball and show the promise that we've all heard about. Outside of that, as I said, that will be the biggest challenge. And if they can find a bowling attack to take 20 wickets, which is easier said than done, then yes. If not, they'll find it pretty hard with a few tough days in the park.
What do you think, Craig? Can they do it, or do you think Australia will be too good at home?
Well, Australia are obviously better at home because batting-wise, it doesn't do a lot. But I think they've got to find a class spinner. You don't go to Australia and be successful over there, no matter what your bowling attack, unless you've got a quality spinner who can work well from one end. But what they do is, because they score so quickly and they score so many runs, they put pressure on the opposition in that way. But yeah, I'm with Hesson. The English sides have always struggled in New Zealand and Australia because of the Kookaburra ball. They need the pace, but yeah, find a quality spinner, and then I think they'll certainly go over there very confident. As with Australia, Australia will be hoping that Nathan Lyon can hang on, because without him, they might find playing at home be a lot tougher with their bowling attack.
The only thing missing from that 5th test was Broad picking up Warner just one more time. I know everyone wanted that. So, Craig, let's talk about you. Now, you are the head coach of the Otago Sparks. How is that going? What's that been like? I've spoken to a lot of the female athletes that you've been working with, and they all love you. They love what you do. They love what you bring to the group. Are you enjoying it? They paid me to say that, but... I
was going to say, yeah, it's going to be a slide from there, isn't it? But yeah, no, I was loving it. I did the job for 2 years. I had a full-time job and then coached the Sparks alongside that. But then last October, became a full-time coach here at Otago Cricket, looking after the Sparks. So last season I was full-time, and now I've been given the charge of the female pathway too in Otago Cricket. So sort of a split role. But when it comes to that during the season, I'm fully with the Sparks, and it's great. It's in some ways, I don't know where I'm going with what I do. 1 minute I'm broadcasting, I'm doing radio and all over the place. But, at the moment, I'm loving coaching. I've get a real thrill out of working with a group of athletes and trying to just make them develop and be better as people, but also as cricketers. And the Sparks have been wonderful. They've given me a lot of joy, and also they're a great group to work with. So it's a changing landscape now. We're in the stage in the women's game in New Zealand where all the coaches now are all full-time. We've got 13 contracted players, albeit only for 6 months, and it's a training contract, but equal pay when it comes to play. So we've got real opportunities if we develop quality young athletes into White Ferns. There's a huge career for them now when you look at not only what the tournaments around the world, but what the White Ferns can earn and the career they can have. So, a real sense of responsibility. I'm probably where Hess was maybe sort of 12, 14 years ago when he took over the Vaults with a young group and trying to find our purpose. But the potential was huge, and I'm really lucky. So at the moment, I wouldn't want to be doing anything else.
I love hearing that. You hear about, pathways. You look at New Zealand cricket for females, where it's all at. And then you look at what's been happening over in England, the female Ashes, which was all squared up. And that you'd have to say they're the two best teams going around in the world in terms of the female sides. How much do you think New Zealand has to learn from what they've done and how they've set things up for their female sides?
Well, look, I think it actually comes back to domestic cricket, to be brutally honest. I mean, England and Australia have got depth, and they haven't got that by accident. They've had that because they've had the BBL, and they've been able to bring in some fine players. They've been able to grow that depth from underneath, and the same with the 100 in England as well. So you're getting, maybe 40, 50 English players, same with Australians, getting in and mixing and playing with the very, very best. Whereas at the moment, the only players that get exposed to that are players that are already quality White Ferns. So they go and play in those other tournaments. Now, it's something that I think, both the men's and women's program have to do. New Zealand, for me, have to franchise their domestic tournament and try and actually get a situation where there's enough quality players mixing and mingling with the New Zealand domestic players. And at the they're still trying to grow that depth, but at the moment, there's probably too many of them playing at that level. Therefore, the standard's probably not quite where it needs to be. And Craig will know that probably more so than me. But, same with in the men's game many years ago, there were probably 3, 4 or 5 players in each team who probably aren't quite there yet and who deserve to be playing a level of cricket. But for me, they still also need to really earn the right to be playing in that tournament. And if you add 3-4 internationals to each side, you're actually going to increase the standard and expose that next tier of potential white ferns to a far higher standard than they're getting at the moment. And that's, to me, the way you're going to bridge the gap. Not so much just extending domestic contracts, playing more players that are probably not quite there yet against each other. That's not really going to improve the standard. It might create a bigger pool of players at a similar standard, but it's not going to increase the standard. And that's something that I think New Zealand cricket seriously need to look at.
So it is time now for our World Cup flashback. And obviously Craig Cumming is far older than Mike Hesson or myself, because he's going all the way back to 1992 for his flashback. You have fond memories of this Cricket World Cup. Talk us through the game that you have the fondest memories of.
Yeah, I apologise to Mike, obviously coach of 2015. And also my favourite moment, Laura, I apologise to you. I forgot about, Guppy's 200.
Thank you.
You go back to, you're 47 years of age, and I remember, obviously, our home World Cup in 91. I remember I was in Timaru, I was playing it, and that was a stage where I was hugely influenced by, the TV and the stars in the New Zealand side. And I always remember the World Cup, the first game at Eden Park against Australia. It was built up. We were, we're a dibbly-dobbly side. They talked about it. We weren't listed with a whole lot of, I suppose, world-class players. But I just always remember Martin Crowe. I mean, I grew up watching Martin on TV, and then I'd run outside and try and replicate everything that he did on the TV screen. And that 100 he scored against Australia, full house. They were in a bit of trouble too, from memory. And then just seeing him play his pull shots, the way he did that swivel pull against spin. And then, funny enough, I don't know why I remember this, but the two run-outs, the one that Chris Harris did to run David Boone, I remember that was what made us feel like we were going to beat Australia. And we thought we had no chance of that game. And also, I think Chris Cairns ran out Dean Jones, and Dean Jones never got run out. He was the best runner between the wickets. So, and we know what happened in that World Cup. And a very similar journey for, obviously, Hess when he was here in 2015. But that World Cup really inspired me to want to be a black cap. And, watching Martin Crowe score another 100, as I said, that was what, put us to bed at night time. You shut your eyes and dreamt of being a black cap. And, those memories still ring strong in my mind.
Yes, I actually recall during the 2015 World Cup, we had an event, I think, the night before the Aussie game, where we went and we celebrated that we talked about that game and Martin Crowe's innings. Was it at Sky City? I think we went to, and there was a big thing about his induction into the Hall of Fame, and that was a real moment for a lot of players who, even like Ross Taylor, I think he remembers particularly this game. He's talked about at length. I'm way too young. I've just seen the highlights, but here's for you. Is that a moment? Is that a cricketing moment that sticks out in your memory bank?
Yeah, it was my last year at school, and I certainly didn't go to school on those playing days. And certainly watched all of those games live, I think on TV1, I think it was at the time. And that game was amazing. It was actually on a Saturday. So I think we were playing cricket at the time. It was a Saturday. So obviously had the radio going, listening to everything, and then rushing home to watch the end of the game. Saw the Chris Harris direct hit going for two, only aiming at one stump from the boundary, and that was a real turning point, as Craig's alluded to. Obviously opening the bowling with Deepak Patel. First time we did that, I think Rod Latham potentially picking up, I think he might have even got 5 that day, getting that little caught and bowled, where his little stocky frame was sort of airborne like this as he took a nice caught and bowled. So it was just so many different memories from that. And then New Zealand got on a roll, and it was, it was basically, can we do it the next time? Can we do it the next time? And obviously, it was a really influential time in my life as a cricket fan as well. So it was I can remember every single player in that team, and obviously Martin Crowe was the leader of that team. And when he went off the park in the semi-final, things potentially turned around a little bit. But it was an amazing month or so as a spectator, and as I said, certainly had an influence on my life. So, yeah, certainly a good memory, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think 2015 probably followed the same path with, Hess, you're in the middle of it, and Laura, you're in the grandstand, with your vino, trying to pretend you're supporting, but trying to get another vino down
you. Absolutely.
Again,
you know me.
that was the journey. Yeah, that was the journey and we just got it now with the football, but everyone just got on this roll, and the same happened in 2015. And as I said, that when they talk about inspiring the next generation, it's about, say, us cricketers. When I was young, I was still playing at high school, going home and, you know, as I call them pillow moments, you lie down, you shut your eyes and you dream of being Martin Crowe. You dream, maybe not of being Rob Latham at the bowling crease, but through that time.
Rock and Rod, what do you mean?
And then the same in 2015, you know, we probably have more players in that group who you could go and try and be, whether it be Guppy, whether it be Ross, whether it be Kane, Trent, you know, you can name probably more. Dan Vettori, who I actually ran into the other day too over in England with Australia. That's what creates our inspiration. And that's what creates the way for our next generation. So they're so influential in what's a really special game, but we've got to show them the good as well.
Craig, thank you so much for joining us today. No pressure on you now with the old Otago Sparks there. So good luck to you for the upcoming season. It's a wee way away yet, but I'm sure you're right in the thick of planning and prepping for that.
Always working, Laura. Always doing something. Now that I'm full-time, I've got to have a pad out. I'm always looking at video. But I don't have a problem filling my day in either talking cricket or looking at cricket. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Your poor wife, Penny. Hes, thank you so much again. Great to talk cricket with you. And thank you so much for joining us here, Laura, on No Boundaries. We'll see you next time.